On April 14, 2025, a man I had been servicing cars for nearly 12 years pulled into my shop on the back of a flatbed. His SUV had died on the highway less than a mile from his exit, 2 weeks before his daughter's wedding, with 83,000 miles on an engine he had maintained better than most people maintain their own bodies. He climbed down from the tow truck cab looking like he had not slept. He handed me his key fob and said, "I don't understand. I do everything you tell me." He was right. He did. He changed his oil early. He used the brand of fuel his manual recommended. He never missed a service interval. He came in for diagnostics the moment something felt off. And now he was standing in my parking lot watching his SUV get unloaded with a top end full of metal shavings and a catalytic converter melted into something that no longer resembled a car part. The dealer down the road had quoted him $14,000 for a long block replacement. Today, I am revealing the 30-second mistake almost every driver in America makes at a gas station without thinking. The chain reaction it starts inside your fuel system, and the catastrophic engine damage it quietly causes weeks or months later. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why my customer's engine died, why the dealer never bothered to find the real cause, and how to make sure the same thing never happens to you. Let me back up to where this story really begins. 3 weeks before that engine failed, my customer pulled into a gas station off Route 9 on his way home from work. He has filled up at that same station for years. The price was reasonable, the location was convenient, but on that particular evening, parked alongside the building, with its hoses snaked into the ground, was a fuel tanker truck offloading thousands of gallons of gasoline into the station's underground tanks. He saw it. He paused. He looked at his fuel gauge sitting just above empty. He looked at the clock. He had a 20-minute drive home, traffic was already building, and the next station was 8 miles in the wrong direction. He spent maybe 30 seconds making the decision. He pulled up to the pump, filled his tank, and drove off. He had no idea he had just signed his engine's death warrant. Here is the uncomfortable truth that the fuel industry would prefer you never learn. Every gas station in America stores its fuel in massive underground tanks, typically between 8,000 and 12,000 gallons each, buried directly under the pump island. Those tanks have been sitting in the ground for years, decades in some cases, and inside them, layered on the bottom in a sludge that nobody pumps out and almost nobody talks about, is the accumulated debris of every delivery that station has ever received. Rust flakes from the inside of the steel tank walls, sediment that settled out of countless fuel shipments, tiny amounts of water that condensed inside the tank every time temperatures shifted, microbial growth from that water sitting in fuel, particulate matter small enough to slip through every filter at the refinery. None of it ever leaves the tank. It just stays there, settled at the bottom, in a layer most station owners pretend does not exist. Under normal operation, this is not a problem for you. The pump that draws fuel up into the dispensers has a pickup tube that ends roughly 4 inches above the bottom of the tank. The clear, clean fuel sits above that sludge layer, and that is what gets pumped into your car. The system is designed around the assumption that sediment stays settled. That assumption holds completely until a tanker truck arrives. When a fuel delivery happens, a driver backs a tanker up to the fill ports, drops a hose into the underground tank, and dumps somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 gallons of fresh fuel down into it at high velocity. That impact does not just refill the tank, it detonates it. Every gallon of incoming fuel violently churns the existing supply. The sediment at the bottom, The rust, the water, the microbial residue, every contaminant that has been quietly accumulating for years gets stirred up like silt at the bottom of a river when a boat blows through. For the next 15 to 30 minutes after that delivery, the fuel coming out of those pumps is not the fuel you think you are buying. It is fuel mixed with everything that station's underground tank has been hiding. This is not a conspiracy theory. The Petroleum Equipment Institute, the industry's own technical organization, has been warning station operators for decades to shut down their pumps during deliveries, and for at least 15 minutes afterward. Most stations do not. Some post a small sign. Most do not even do that. The driver pulling up to the pump has no idea that the fuel currently flowing through the dispenser is loaded with contaminants the underground tank just churned to the surface. He just sees a working pump and a green light. This is exactly what my customer pumped into his SUV that evening. Not bad gas in the sense of the wrong octane or a watered-down product. Contaminated gas. Fuel laced with microscopic particulate matter and a small but significant amount of water that should have stayed at the bottom of an underground tank for another 6 months. He had no way of knowing. The fuel looked normal. The receipt looked normal. The drive home felt normal. The damage was already in motion. Here is what actually happened inside his vehicle over the next 3 weeks. The contaminated fuel went into his fuel tank and immediately began its journey through the system. The first defense line was the fuel pump sock, a small mesh strainer at the bottom of the in-tank fuel pump. It caught the largest particles. Within days, it was partially blocked. Fuel flow restricted. The pump began working harder to draw fuel through the obstruction. The next line was the inline fuel filter, designed to catch finer particles before they reach the engine. That filter, normally good for 30,000 miles, was being asked to handle several years' worth of contaminants in a single tank. It began clogging at a fraction of its normal rate. As the filter clogged, fuel pressure at the rail dropped. The injectors, which need a specific pressure to deliver the correct fine mist of fuel, started spraying weakly. The mixture leaned out. The engine control unit responded the only way it knows how, by pulling timing back to protect against detonation. Power dropped slightly. Fuel economy got worse. The customer noticed neither, because the engine control unit is engineered to hide exactly this kind of slow degradation from the driver. Then came the highway. On a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after that gas station fill-up, my customer merged onto the interstate and pressed the accelerator to get up to traffic speed. Under that high load, the engine demanded more fuel than the obstructed pump and clogged filter could deliver. The mixture went lean at exactly the moment it could afford it least. Lean fuel under load is not a quiet condition. It detonates. Instead of burning smoothly across the combustion chamber, the fuel mixture ignites in multiple places at once, slamming against the piston like a hammer. Once, twice, hundreds of times per minute. The engine control unit registered the knock and tried to compensate by pulling timing further. But the underlying problem was not timing. It was fuel pressure. Within 4 miles of highway driving, his engine had absorbed more detonation damage than it would have seen in 100,000 miles of clean fuel. The aluminum ring lands at the top of his pistons fractured. Combustion gases began blowing past the rings into the crankcase, diluting the oil and pressurizing the system. With the rings compromised, raw fuel washed down the cylinder walls, stripping the thin film of oil that separates aluminum pistons from iron cylinder bores. Metal began grinding on metal. The catalytic converter, downstream, started receiving the unburned fuel that should have stayed in the combustion chamber. Its internal honeycomb structure heated to over 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit and began to melt into a glowing red slag. By the time my customer felt his SUV stumble on the highway, his engine was already dead. He just did not know it yet. He coasted to a stop on the shoulder. He called for a tow. He arrived at my shop with a vehicle that had been signing its own death certificate from the inside out for 3 weeks. What makes this so insidious is that almost nobody connects the original cause to the eventual failure. The damage takes time to accumulate. By the time the engine dies, the gas station delivery is a forgotten memory 3 Tuesdays ago. The dealer who quoted him $14,000 never asked where he had fueled up most recently. They never pulled the fuel filter and looked at it. They never sent a fuel sample to a lab. They quoted him a long block and moved on. If he had paid, that engine would have been replaced. The new one would have been filled with fuel from his garage gas can, and the underlying lesson would have been buried with the old engine. He would never have known why it really happened. This is why I keep telling people that the most expensive automotive mistakes are almost never the ones that feel expensive in the moment. The mistake is a 30-second decision at a gas pump. The bill arrives weeks later, dressed up as something else entirely. And here is what I want you to remember, because this is the part that matters more than the science. The gas station is not the villain in this story. Some stations are excellent. They shut down their pumps during deliveries. They maintain their tanks. They replace their fuel filters at the dispensers on schedule. The villain is a system that does not require any of that and does not warn you when you are walking into trouble. You have to protect yourself because nobody else in that chain is incentivized to do it for you. So here is what you do. Before you pull up to a pump, scan the lot for a tanker truck. Look for hoses running from a tanker into the ground around the pump island. Look for traffic cones blocking off a section. Look for a driver in a high-visibility vest doing paperwork at the side of the tanker. If you see any of those signs, drive past. Do not fill up at that station for at least 30 minutes after the tanker leaves. The fuel will settle. The sediment will fall back to the bottom of the tank. The fuel coming out of the pump will be what it should be. If you are committed to that station and have time to wait, park across the lot, run an errand, or get a cup of coffee. Come back later. The inconvenience is 15 minutes. The alternative is a 4-figure repair bill, or, in my customer's case, a 5-figure one. If you suspect you have already pulled into a station mid-delivery, do not panic, but do not ignore it either. Drive carefully home. Top off with fuel from a trusted station the next day so the contaminated fuel is diluted, not concentrated. Plan to change your fuel filter sooner than normal. Pay attention to how the car feels over the next 2 to 4 weeks. Hesitation under acceleration, sluggish throttle response, harder cold starts, faint knocking sounds under load. Any of those warrant a scanner check and a look at fuel pressure before they cascade into something catastrophic. And here is the broader lesson that goes beyond gas pumps. Modern engines do not announce their problems with flashing lights and dramatic warnings. They absorb damage quietly, compensate for as long as they can, and then fail all at once on a Tuesday morning when you are merging onto a highway with no shoulder. The people who keep their engines alive long past their expected service life are not lucky, and they are not driving better cars. They are paying attention to small decisions other drivers never think twice about. A 30-second pause at the entrance of a gas station, a glance for a tanker truck, a willingness to drive an extra 8 miles when something does not feel right. That is the entire difference between $14,000 and nothing at all. If this changed the way you look at the next gas station you pull into, hit like. so more drivers see it before they make the same 30-second mistake my customer made. Subscribe if you want the kinds of warnings the industry will never put on a sticker at the pump. And if you have ever pulled in mid-delivery, noticed something off afterward, or learned this lesson the hard way like my customer did, drop your story in the comments. Because the most dangerous moments in your ownership are not the ones that look dangerous. They are the ones that look completely ordinary right up until the bill arrives.